Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to put a top end on a Husqvarna 562 XP. I didn't want this to be a terribly long video, so we shift her into overdrive right off the bat here. I'll just walk you through what I'm doing. So first we're going to pull the circlips off the piston and gently tap the grungin pin out of it. Grungin? I don't remember. First pin. But I'm putting pressure on the piston while I'm tapping so that I'm not stressing the lower rod bearing. I can't stress enough cleanliness. You can see how much junk that Q-tip took off of the inside of that small end of the connecting rod. The other thing I can't stress enough is inspecting your new parts. Yeah, they're new, but you know, if someone had a bad day or dropped something or something got by the assembly process, you don't need that biting you in the butt on your rebuild. So look over at all the new parts, check for burrs or sharp edges or even problems with the casting. I'm only missing one screw, that ain't bad. I think I'm missing a screw. Cripes! You know, I wouldn't be surprised if that screw right there wasn't even from this project. There's so much hardware laying on that floor underneath that bench. You could probably put together 3/4 of a chainsaw with what's laying there.
Bullshit detected. Take precautions.
So one thing I do with my Husqvarna top end rebuilds is I ditch the decomp valve. Huskies ditched it on a lot of their models in the 50cc range. This one's 562, but I see too many problems with them. If the customer complains, well then I'll put one in, but we try and get by without doing it. So you'll notice on this Husky piston that one of the circlips comes pre-installed on the piston already. So you only got to put one in there. And then there's an arrow on top of the piston, and we know the arrow faces the exhaust port. So we'll just make sure we have that oriented correctly when we put it together. Oil the bearing before you put the pin in. And now we're going to put the circlip in. Sometimes this goes easy, sometimes it's a little hard. Now that's the technique I use. I kind of drop the open end in and then give it a half gainer when I'm twisting it around. It's kind of hard to explain. Really hard to get a picture of when you get the camera where I did. The other thing you want to do is take a look at the locating pin for the piston rings. Make sure that the ring's assembled correctly on the piston and the pin is not sticking out, or you know, for a while the 562s, I think the first ones, that pin actually was coming loose and getting jammed up in the cylinders and making a big mess. So you also saw there that I have a little tool I use for oiling the lower bearings. I've used 2-cycle oil and canned gas to thin it out enough to run through that little needle oiler. Seems to work pretty good. Now some guys will just try and slap this piston over the top of the ring, and it might go, might not. I don't do it that way. I use the little ring compressor tool. And I'm pretty sure this is where I'm going to catch some slack in the comments section, but this is the textbook way according to the Husqvarna workshop manual for this saw. This is the way you want to put the gasket compound on this gasket. Nothing on the top side, and then just a stripe on each end. And I guess that's to catch the gap where the two case halves of the crankcase meet. Warranty work, I just always do it the way the shop manual says to do it. You'll see in some other videos where I just lube up the whole gasket evenly. You know, the saws come assembled this way. Every time I take one apart, I look at the gasket, and it's just had sealant put on the two ends on these, at least the 550s and the 562s. So we got our top end in place, pretty much. There it is. We got our bag of goodies from when we took it apart. And we're going to get all 4 of the bolts and bushings for the cylinder in place and snugged down by hand. You know, I wanted to get the whole repair on this video, and I didn't want it to be 30 minutes long, so you know, that's why we're kind of rushing through this. I didn't want to skip anything, although there's one part that I really do skip, and that is, well, I'll explain it when we get there. So now I'm going to torque down these bolts to 10 Newton meters. I think I take it to 8 first, and then I take it to 10. And you know, a lot of guys will just turn them down by hand. You can do it any way you want, I don't care. But because I'm only putting sealant on those 2 strips on the gasket, I really want to make sure that that cylinder is bolted down flat, even. No warping or twisting or anything like that. So I'll use the torque wrench on that, and then on case halves. Otherwise, sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. So, I guess I skipped over it here. The part that I edited out of this video would have been after I torqued down the cylinder head. I went through and pressure tested everything and made sure that there was no air leaks. But I've shown you that pressure testing on this channel so many times that I figured that was an easy part to edit out and shorten up this video a little bit. So here we're going to install the throttle cable into the throttle cable holder. We're going to get the fuel line up where it needs to be to connect to the carburetor. We're going to hook up our electrical connector for our auto tune.
Cripes!
It snaps into that holder. This little ring keeps that rubber boot from deforming. There's a couple snaps on that the carburetor actually snaps in place right there. We get our fuel line pushed on and our air filter holder put in place. There's a line that runs up to the primer bulb that has to be put on, and then it's tacked into or held into the back of that air filter holder box thingy jobber. Get our carburetor tightened down. Put another fuel line on. And our throttle cable has to be attached to the throttle cam. You just kind of put it in place, and then when you pull on the trigger, it drops down where it's supposed to be.
Good. It's quiet over here.
Then the air filter holder box sits in some rubber isolator boots there. Then we'll kind of do a little function check and make sure that the high idle will work and it kicks off when we pull the trigger. New top end, excuse me, a new top end gets a new spark plug. I'm getting just a little bit ahead of myself right here. There's one screw that still has to go in, but I'll discover it before I try and start this thing. And when I do start it, I'm only going to run it for a little bit because the gasket is still not dry yet on there, but the little bit of heat that I'm going to put into it just to make sure that the thing starts and runs is going to make a difference. I'm always looking for something, ain't I? There it is. So that's all I got for you on the Husqvarna 562 XP top end. Thanks for watching. Later.
Yeah.